Hello, everyone. Really happy to see so many people here today to talk through the journey Atom Bank's been on in terms of building a bank on the cloud. Feedback after session, you've probably seen the slide. My name's Rana, Bhattacharya, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Atom Bank, and I'm joined with...
So, Reg Williams, I run our UK and Ireland architecture practice.
Okay. We're going to talk today really around our journey moving to the cloud using Google and our re-architecture to leverage Google. A lot of you probably aren't familiar with Atom, so we thought we would start with a bit of background around Atom. So Atom, from a concept, came about April 2014. We were given a restricted license in June 2014 to actually build the first bank in the UK that was app only. We launched April 2016 with a fixed rate saver and a SME proposition. This was on iOS. Following a few months, we launched an Android app. Towards the end of 2016, we launched a mortgage proposition. Effectively, right now, we're roughly 2 billion on both sides of the balance sheet, both savings and lending. And more recently, for the likes, in terms of this discussion, we signed a contract with Google in February and launched our initial workloads in Google in August this year. So I'll just kind of explain that we are a live working bank. We went live in 2016, but last year we started a journey to actually move to the cloud and actually re-architect a bank. So you can kind of wondering, why did we do that if we can do things like have 2 billion on both sides of the balance sheet? So when we incepted the bank, there wasn't a real clear guidance from the regulators around the use of cloud. So as a bank, you're kind of constrained by a level of guidance. But as we were creating bank, we were very clear in the future we wanted to embrace the use of cloud and other technologies that were coming through. So we took an opportunity last year to create a program of work to basically start building a new bank alongside the bank we already have. And what we're going to talk about is really that program of work that we've been going through. For us, it's very important because we have a vision of where we want to take a bank and how we want to serve our customers. We want to really drive benefits for our customers, give them the service and products that they need and want. And we felt this was best served by us moving to cloud and creating a stack that works in the cloud to really give those benefits. Quite often you kind of go, right, what other challenges are you kind of trying to face? And some of the challenges we have are being felt by a lot of other banking institutions. So if you think about where we started from, so originally, because we couldn't use a cloud, we leveraged third-party data centers. If you go down that model, it's a model, it's not a vendor, go down that model, what you'll find is basically that doesn't give you the flexibility or agility you need because you are data center centric. Similarly enough, you're quite often the challenge you find is you're using batch processes rather than real-time event data processing. Also, that whole model around data centers and suppliers, you kind of often see over-resilience on third parties, where effectively they are running core functions for you. And because it's a commercial relationship, what you find is, you want to change something. There's an impact assessment, there's a change request raised, you have to prove a change request. Someone then goes and buys some hardware, someone then installs it, someone then configures it with operating systems, loads software. That takes time. That takes a lot of time. So we knew from our perspective, both from a cost and a speed perspective, that we wanted to be more self-sufficient, and actually leveraging cloud helps us do that. So our response to all these challenges was to create what we call the Atom banking machine, which really is around the technology, which is our platform, our people, and data. Because at the end of the day, you could have the world's best technology, but if you haven't got the people to use it properly in a way that gives you agility, then you just got some technology. And at the heart of a bank is really data, in terms of its customers, in terms of payments, etc. So if you don't actually manage to fuse those three things together, you're not going to be successful in this journey. So at a very high level, we're creating a state-of-the-art banking platform and the bedrock of that is leveraging the Google Cloud. And what we're trying to do is create one of the most advanced banking machines in the industry. So we're using Thought Machine, which will be a cloud-native smart contract-based core banking platform. So I've been in banks where basically you might spend a year developing a product. Here, basically, through configuration, which is really code, effectively, you could define what a product looks like in days and weeks. Obviously, there's more things to do outside of defining the product and just launching it, but you're taking the pressures away from product development by virtue of leveraging this sort of technology. Again, we're also injecting event streaming through the use of Kafka into our platform, and again, using the benefits of cloud and DevOps to give us the agility across our estate. What we're trying to do is create a plug-and-play partnering model, leveraging APIs and event-based architecture to basically give us a level of segregation between getting vendor locking. So basically, historically in banking platforms, in a lot of banks, once you integrate a third party, you're kind of locked into that third party because it's like committing heart surgery, trying to move it out. Quite often organizations fall in and out of love with various vendors, but can't do anything about it because it will take you years to kind of decouple that relationship, and we didn't want to fall into that. And one of the key important points here also is, for us, we wanted to be in control, not vendors. So we've also been increasing our own capability and capacity within the bank to take control of more of our engineering. So things like our own app development, which was already there, but we bolstered the size of the team, our integration, things like Kafka, our ability to configure our own products on Thought Machine, etc. We're all going to do that in-house. The benefits of this would be speed, efficiency, allow us to innovate and experiment without actually, for a startup, costing the earth. And also, we're doing most of this through a level of configuration within Atom itself. The journey we've been on, effectively, we started last year where basically we went on an RFP process with the usual suspects, as you would think. And we went down a route of selecting Google and Accenture to help us provide us with some initial capability to create our own capability and also start making progress on our delivery journey. And it was quite important for us to do that because we didn't want to just organically grow and take a lot of time and not make progress. We wanted to basically organically grow, make progress. And what Accenture did to help us was basically gave us some people who knew the right ways of working to kind of take us forward in the short term, embed that ways of working while we recruited people in as well. So we created our DevOps capability. We started doing design for various phases of a transition of building this bank and also decommissioning the old bank. Right now, we've finished phase 0, and within the next few weeks, we'll be completing phase 1. Then throughout next year, we're closing off phase 2, and we're looking at phase 3 as well. And at the end of phase 2, we would have actually launched our full stack of our new bank. Then phase 3 is really just closing down the old bank within a data center, effectively. So, within the next few weeks, we'll have a hybrid bank, let's say, old world, new world, and then we'll be adding more componentry into the cloud and using SaaS services in view of shutting down the old bank in a safe manner when we're ready. In terms of our transformation, I use the word partner, and part of our journey has been also to differentiate between suppliers and partners, because suppliers, quite often you have a transactional relationship with, they do something, there's a contract, etc. But we've been looking for partners, because partnership is more than a contract, where basically you have someone on your side who is looking to help you succeed. And what we look for with our relationship with Google particularly is having a long-term partner who is actually there to help us succeed. And we are here today as part of promoting the help Google has given us as well on our journey as well. From an Accenture standpoint as well, we were looking for a partner to help us on our transition. And from day one, it was kind of help us to create a capability, but we want to be self-sufficient. And Accenture kind of helped us do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add on that these guys set the bar very high coming into this work, and we'll go on and see infrastructure as code, soup to nuts in terms of building these environments on the cloud, dev and test, and production. And of course, we've been delighted to help build that capability inside Atom. But it's particularly interesting in that this bank has taken that business approach to bring a proposition to market quickly, employing a lot of on-premise capability, and then refactor onto the cloud as part of their future growth strategy, which obviously for our organization as well is something that we see a lot of our bigger clients wrestling with, right? They've got years of technical debt, and they're trying to work their way through all of that. So for us, it's a really important partnership to work together, to be successful, to help learn in the market how we all address some of the key challenges around that problem and moving stuff off large monolithic systems of record on traditional IT and move on to the fast new cloud-based infrastructure.
Cool. We talked about it was essential for us to build our own capability, and part of this was really training and upskilling. So obviously, we're a running bank, we've got people, but we want those people to start embracing Google. What Google helped us do actually is part of the investment and the partnership. They invested training into Atom, and not just Atom, but also into Accenture where required. So Accenture's got some good people on areas like AWS. They have a good background in delivery, but also just getting them up and ready to help us on Google was part of the investment Google put into this journey as well, which was really refreshing to see. Then on recruitment, again, through discussions with Google and Accenture and our own kind of recruitment function, we started building out our own Atom team from a DevOps perspective as well to be capable of running a full stack bank. Culture was quite important. I'll go back to the point around, you can select all the tools you want to, but if you haven't got the people to run it in the right way, tool's a tool. So Accenture brought in a experienced Scrum Master, an Agile coach, and then we very quickly created the right working approach of a high cadence delivery approach where basically we're using sprints to basically develop via DevOps the key capabilities of the infrastructure and the ability to deploy our applications in a repeatable and a robust fashion.
Yeah.
We'll talk a bit more about what that actually means shortly. Then as part of the journey, as we are a bank, moving to the cloud, we just can't do that without consulting with the regulators, as you would expect. So the regulator's job is to make sure that a bank works in a way that doesn't harm its customers or broader country, the national infrastructure, because banks are part of national infrastructure. So we went into a discussion with the regulator about our journey, and it's worthwhile kind of just talking about some of the high-level discussion points. So there's something called Sysgate, which is part of the FCA handbook, and this really talks about if you have a material outsource, there's certain provisions that need to be in the contract around audit rights, liability, etc. So to make sure the bank has the right sort of contract for a material outsource. So we had to make sure we had a contract with Google that allowed us that level of coverage. Similarly, at the same time, EBA guidelines from cloud outsourcing, we had to make sure we had things around exit strategy, etc., all bottomed out that we could demonstrate that we actually knew how to control the contract. More interesting discussions we had with the regulators were around things like data residency and data sovereignty. So obviously, we're a bank, we've got customer data, we've got payment data, etc. So it was essential that the regulator understood that we understood where data was going to reside. So none of our data is going to be outside of Europe. It's going to be hosted primarily in London, and we've got a failover site in another location in Europe as well. Then data sovereignty is really around who controls the data and who can see it, and we had to demonstrate an understanding of how the data would be held in Google and that Google could actually see it, because quite often there is a lot of noise in the industry really around cloud providers, big organizations being able to use other people's data without permission. Google can't see our data in terms of the way the encryption works, etc. We talked about exit plan. If you're going to make a material move, irrespective of is it cloud or any other provider, you need to understand if it doesn't go well, how do you move away to someone else or something else. Then governance. The governance point was really the regulator wanted to understand, do you as an organization understand what you are saying you're going to do, and have you gone through the right levels of approval internally and mitigated risk? And we had to basically go with a governance process and get our board, the Atom Bank board, to attest to the fact that we have gone through the right process and the right risks are mitigated and we have the right controls in place to run a bank on the cloud effectively. So where will we end up with our journey? So we'll have a new banking platform. This will have capabilities where we can define products very quickly using things like Thought Machine. We'll have a real-time data streaming layer, which will basically allow us to create actions on real-time events. So things like, if a certain type of payment happens, we can send out a notification if we wanted to in real time, not relying on batch. We can provide, in the future, real-time customer insights, etc. All of which, importantly, is under Atom control. So our team will be making changes and running the show of the bank rather than being overly reliant on third parties. Obviously, we're going to, for some of our services, use things like SaaS, where we believe that's the right thing. But for areas that are very important for the bank, we want to be in control. And once we have this in place, we'll be able to decommission our legacy systems. And what that means is we'll be able to create a very superior customer experience, the right products and services at pace and the right cost point. Because what we're trying to do is basically use technology to automate as much as possible so our operating costs are low, which therefore means that we could basically price products for our customers at a more appropriate price and try and get them the most value as possible. So we're here at a Google conference, so it's worthwhile talking about what's worked well with Google. I talked a lot about partnership earlier. Right from the outset, we said we wanted a partner because 50% of our journey is really around having a partner, because you will have bumps on your journey, any journey you will do, but it's really around having someone you can work with to get over those obstacles, and that's what we have found in our journey with Google. Support for upskilling, again, we talked about the training investment, which was great, and also access to other Googlers as well when you have point problems. And again, that doesn't go into discussions around the contracts. You just say, can we get some help? Someone appears, answers questions, we move on. We are already seeing the benefits around the agility, the scalability, and resilience. We'll come on to that a bit more later. Cost is under our control. Quite often, the banking is constrained around the number of environments you can have in a more traditional approach. We can spin up environments very fast, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But there's a cost to it, but we control it. We could also shut down those environments when we don't need to. And then we've got the benefit of basically the evergreening and trying to keep things in support. Because if I think about our current banking stack that we have live, we have to coordinate various patch releases, security releases, et cetera, but behind the scenes, Google is working on that, and you just have to kind of allow Google just to take care of that for you, which minimizes the activities you have to coordinate effectively and the risk around that. Some lessons learned from this journey. So security is a big part of a bank. One of the security capabilities within Google is CMEC, which is Customer Managed Encryption Keys. We're leveraging this because we want to be on control of the keys as much as possible in terms of instantiation, rotation, et cetera. What we found was CMEC initially wasn't rolled out across all the regions as we assumed it would be, but for us, it's been rolled out where we need it to be now, so that's great. And also, there's a roadmap of where CMEC will be available within the various different services of Google, and we just need to kind of understand how best we could use what functions that were available that weren't CMEC, plus when CMEC would be available to allow us on our journey to go live. There's a point here around lack of geographical separation within the UK region. So if you're familiar with Google regions, each Google region typically has 3 zones. What we found was some of those zones were quite close together for a bank because we've got certain rules around geographic dispersion. So effectively, if you wanted to do a disaster recovery scenario, you can't have 2 data centers too close together, effectively, right? So the zones are effectively data centers. But again, Google are working on that, but part of our deployment model, we've taken care of that issue anyway, so we're kind of good to go. But contracts took a while longer to establish. Again, we talked about the type of contracts we need for a bank, CISCA, EBA, guidance compliant, but we got there in the end. What was refreshing was Google worked with us through that process, obviously, to get our contract, but used it as a lessons learned process and created what they call the FS addendum. So next time around, a bank wants a contract with Google, it'll be more efficient in terms of leveraging the timeline, etc. But for us also is really understanding the roadmap. We talked about CMEC, what's available when. Then you get a better view of your journey and what we can use when you've got certain criteria of service required. So, in terms of benefits already realized, I talked about journey where we've done phase 0 and we're about to go live with phase 1. Already, we've built our in-house capability, so it's fair to say that Accenture's not with us anymore. So in terms of their job, helping us build our capability, that's been established. We've got our own SREs to basically take us forward. Our lead time for provisioning environments has significantly reduced, and we'll explain what that means. And again, we are getting the value of what we call enterprise agility, and I'm going to demonstrate what that kind of means to us right now. So historically, using a third-party data center model, we probably would have taken circa, at best, around 41 weeks to create another environment of a full-stack bank. Right now, we could do that under a week, so 5 days. And we do this, leveraging the capabilities in Google, where on day one, we effectively create our base networking and our base identity access management capabilities and our DNS, using tools like Vault, Packer, Terraform. Across day 2 and 3, we're basically using infrastructure as a code, deploy the network infrastructure as well as the core software architecture. And it's worth saying, the type of tooling we're using it so it's repeatable and fast. And as a bank, we want to have processes that we know if we use it in one environment, it will work in another environment because they're effectively the same process. But the last 2 days is really around functional testing and making sure everything is running. Then we hand it off to a project, a team, to do the work they need to do after that in terms of developing new features, et cetera, et cetera. Another example worth talking about when we talk about enterprise agility is our ability to release change. So over the last few weeks, we've been taking a change that's just been developed, smoke testing it in a development environment, putting it through a QA or a test environment, then putting it into production in the same day. And we've done this multiple times. And when I say changes, we might do it multiple times, but each change is a baseline of change. So you could be talking about 50 or 100 individual changes incorporated that's going live. And we'll be building out our production environment, which is live internally for us right now, on a daily basis, and adding more change in as we need to in view of going live over the next few weeks in terms of our true customers externally. Here's a quick video of one of the other benefits we've got, as well as going into cloud. So we've got our old app on the left-hand side and our new app on the right-hand side. And through running workloads on Google, the latency is removed. And we're finding, as you can see on the app on the right-hand side, it's running a lot faster. We have built a new app, and this is the first time we're showing it externally in terms of elements of its look and feel. It runs first, and not just because we built it natively, but also the actual interactions over the cloud, the latency is removed because traffic the latency isn't removed, but the traffic is prioritized over Google compared to data center traffic, et cetera, over the internet. So we get the benefits of that as well. So in reality, on the new app, we're talking about we're 6 or 7 seconds faster on our log-on journey.
OK.
We're just going to pick up.
Thank you. So I am indeed the last man standing from Accenture. It's been a real privilege to work with a team on the ground at Atom Bank. They came to us 2 years ago, and as I said earlier, they set a really high bar in terms of what they wanted to automate and how their vision of driving their future bank on Google Cloud Platform, how they wanted to roll that out through essentially building out the infrastructure, the base infrastructure on Google Cloud Platform, building all the DevOps pipes to initially play out the middle-ware stack so that they could run a kind of hybrid model between old, existing on-prem core bank and new and existing app, I think, in at least one transition state, and then move onto new app, onto old bank, and then new app onto new bank, right? All facilitated through, full infrastructure as code-based environments on Google Cloud Platform, running Terraform and Ansible primarily, right across a full middleware stack that I shall not name, but it's quite a lengthy list of all the sorts of usual suspects in a modern cloud-native architecture. And I wanted to bring it up a level because this is the thing that I speak to a lot of clients around their ambition for moving to cloud-native, high-speed, at-scale, successful implementations of financial services solutions, products, retail solutions. Really, it's right across the market unit. And the thing that we've observed is, in fact, we haven't observed it. It's not new. It's well known, and anybody who's read Fred Brooks would recognize the term diseconomy of scale. Right? It's intuitive to all of us as software engineers that the bigger something gets, the harder it gets to scale, the more expensive per line of code it is, the more lines of code you have. So this graph is actually based on some industry data, and it really shows you that if you can break down a 100,000-day project into 10 discrete 10,000-day projects that are not connected to one another, that have only production dependencies, right? Then the benefit is as much as potentially 40,000 days, 40%. How about that for a business case for microservices, if you're ever wondering, right? Because the reality is, all of that technology is not just, it's easy to get into a kind of sweet shop mentality with this stuff. If I use APIs and I use PaaS and I use cloud and I've got a bit of agile, I've got DevOps too, and I bang all of that stuff in over the next 18 months, bang, I'm going to be able to realize all of the potential in terms of faster time to market, lower cost of ownership, better quality. And quite a lot of my clients are finding that that isn't true. Actually, what they're doing is adding more technical debt, shadow IT, cottage industries, losing control of various parts of their estate as a result. But the key thing is not getting the value out, right? They're still going to market every 18 months. Maybe this is not familiar, but for me, we live this every day, right? More or less. In big organizations characterized by having 40 years of technical debt. So, go forward, go the right way. So what we want to be doing is operating in the top zone. We want to get away from boom and bust IT cycles, big investments in change, rack up some new middleware, the latest and greatest. Last year it was ESB, this year it's API Manager, next year it'll be something else, right? And ironically, a lot of our clients have got all of it between the north face and the south face. It's like the Jurassic coast of middleware going all the way down to the systems of record, right? And that is itself adding drag. So it's like one of those awful, conditions you can get where wherever you try and intervene to do something about it, you make it worse. Okay? We want to be operating up in the top zone with agility and getting away from that kind of boom and bust thing into sort of incremental transformation. So, across all our clients, we're all talking about the same stuff, right? What's hot? PaaS is hot. Running a Kubernetes platform so that I can modularize my code and scale it out and give it to different teams is obviously really hot. APIs has been hot for a while. Use contract-based interactions between your systems to isolate them from one another. That's quite hot. Extremely hot. And what else is on here? And as we've been talking about today, infrastructure as code, automating your pipelines, taking the quality you get out of delivering something 1,000 times through the full stack means that by the time you go into production, that stuff runs like clockwork. That's got a real business benefit, and that's obviously very hot. Data lakes, just a sidebar on data lakes. A lot of people have been starting to address the data and moving the data around. It's quite common to see architectures employing a big data sink to stream information out of your older legacy systems and then put read APIs on the lake and then surface that up through your online channels as a sort of tactic to get around some of the drag in the legacy. So that's kind of fairly heaty. It's quite hot. So a lot of it going on. There's a risk around some of that I'll come on to in terms of it being a bit of a cul-de-sac, unless you are really dealing with the right path, the update path, because ultimately it's another cache strategy, really. But the key point is, still got months and not days. We still have digital channels that are not truly 24/7 and still rely on, update cycles that can take many hours, particularly if there's, complex systems on the back end. We're not seeing enough on, or I don't think there's enough progress necessarily in and around the data. I think there was a survey I read recently that said 78% of CIOs feel that their organizations are not exploiting their data properly. And so there are lots of projects in flight that deal with moving data around, but really in terms of business value being driven from that data, it's not quite such a, there's not quite such a good story. And ultimately, and this is the bit closest to my heart because I'm a delivery guy at the end of the day, we've still got too many dependencies riddling our Gantt charts in all of the software projects we're trying to put live. We haven't really achieved that program to product pivot that we talk a good game around, right? Lean teams, Spotify model, yada, yada, yada. But actually, we still, if you look at any of the work we're doing, have big Gantt charts with lots of dependencies running through the organization. So there's work to do. Now, the one thing I've put in green is called real time, because I think actually that is, there's never a silver bullet, right? You wouldn't believe me if I said that. But I really want to leave you with the impression that eventing is a key part of the success strategy for scale, as well as for business value, because you can have business events, as Rana was talking about, but it can be in the DNA of your architecture, which will fight some of these diseconomies of scale and will allow you to pivot more effectively. So we'll come on to that. So I think I've probably covered that. The key point is you can spend a lot of money going to the cloud and still end up with a pretty brittle application, right? It'll be quicker to get live. You can change it faster, but you've still got to have quite a large organization wrapped around it to do anything front to back that delivers value to your clients. And I characterize that as DevOps and Agile, and to some extent cloud, are essential but not sufficient. You need to be thinking about the architecture. We really need to stand up as architects in the room and take responsibility to work with our teams to define architectures that will work nicely on the cloud, will allow our organization to scale. We talk about that in Accenture as digital decoupling, and because obviously, typically the clients who come to Accenture aren't greenfield clients that have got the luxury of putting all this stuff out there from scratch, right? The typically organizations that have a load of legacy and technical debt, quite complex organizations, and we advocate taking a value-driven approach to modernizing, which basically means, prioritizing your portfolio. And prioritizing based on some KPIs that you are really clear about up front. Things like average cadence into production, right? Total software development size by man days, because that should be getting smaller per release over time. And of course all the quality stuff that's in there. My own plea when I talk about this is to say, the enterprise architects stand up, because you should be inheriting this stuff. This is what enterprise architecture is really about. Is helping your organizations to drive a portfolio of change that will move the needle on your speed to market and your cost of change. Event-driven architecture I've talked about. This is the secret sauce. I've been working in architectures where the APIs are quite brittle. There's lots of them. That you have a contract dependency through the stack. You can be using modern APIs and still be quite brittle. And the events allow you to introduce new functionality without changing any of the other functionality, right? And those events could be it could be pub sub, right? But similarly, those sorts of patterns I think we can see more of in our architectures, and that will allow a more graceful, cost-effective rollout of capability. Layers to ecosystem builds on that. Particularly, I don't know if it's financial services, but quite a lot of the companies I've worked for, they are not prepared to move the data, right? So the microservice is a proxy, and it's sitting above at the top of that Jurassic coast, synchronously plumbing all the way down, 40 feet of concrete into the DB2 mainframe at the bottom. And then if they want to do something experience layer, they add extension columns in DB2. and then it comes all the way back up in a dependency graph through the middleware up to the top, right? So if your microservices layer looks a bit like that, you're not going to drive value. You are still doing one-speed IT if you don't do anything about the data. You can tell yourselves you're doing something else, but really, if you don't move the data around, you're doing one-speed IT. So the thing I'd leave you is think about moving from layers to ecosystem, freestanding systems of engagement, differentiation, record, have their own databases, and talk to each other in a loosely coupled fashion, i.e. via events.
You've actually probably made it worse by adding another layer.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not pretending that's easy, but these are the kinds of things that I think will drive value if you're thinking about architecture. Automate everything. We've talked a lot about infrastructure as code. I think the next step for Atom is to really go soup to nuts on the automation in the service management and really get into being an SRE, managing their operations in the SRE fashion. We'll come and talk about that in a minute. Cloud native but portable. Kubernetes is everywhere, right? Everybody's talking about Kubernetes, and I'm getting into a lot of conversations about which Kubernetes, and actually, what's my cost of making that a bad decision at a point in time? Do we really understand how costly is it to reverse out of that and go in a different direction? I think a call out to what Google are doing, enlightened as usual, with Anthos, and the idea that maybe you can make a decision but hedge your bets a bit, I think is a really grown-up way to do it. I think the Red Hat OpenShift stuff is simpler than using native Kubernetes in my experience, so that's another good option. But you should be thinking about the balance and the trade-off between exploiting the proven technology in the cloud with your flexibility to run multi-cloud and move those workloads around. When I say here, be clear on your strategy for cloud native is a really overloaded term, right? Because on the one hand, it means container platforms to some people, mainly infrastructure-y people. I probably got that wrong, you know what I mean. Almost infrastructure-y people. It means using the cloud's features, right? So I don't have to build anything. They've got their own databases natively in the cloud, and I can use their AI services. It can mean that too, right? To me, it means like building 12-factor apps. So, and that's all fine, right? But you need to understand in your organization what you're actually gunning for and not get confused around what you mean by cloud native and what you're aiming to get from cloud nativity. I'd add one more, which is relevant here. We're using, Rana's team have been mainly focusing on Golang. And that's got enormous advantages in terms of its deployment unit size and reduced set of dependencies or no dependencies. It's a really, I think, an important feature of running a lean and cost-efficient cloud platform. And so there's another angle of cloud nativity. Is, are you actually using a programming language construct that is tailored for the cloud, or are you just shoveling loads of Java onto a JVM that ends up with half a gig microservice runtime? So to bring it back, API first. Rana talked about the importance of APIs to the architecture at Atom. It's not only how the whole thing is going to be stitched together, but also it facilitates the transition states. So to gracefully get from an on-prem version to a hybrid version to a full cloud-native version. An event-based architecture, loosely coupling the different components as they are brought into production, reducing development time dependencies to avoid big projects emerging which carry that weight. We've talked about Go versus Java. We've talked about infrastructure as code. Where next? It's build out the story through operations. Our experience has been the bit we didn't automate was the bit that added a load of drag, which is kind of shucks. We could have thought of that at the beginning, right? The bit we don't do is the bit that causes the drag. So suddenly it becomes all about the change process, right? The service management process. You wrap around building your environments, commissioning your changes, and all that stuff. Because we didn't automate that, you can spin these things up in a minute or two. But if we're on spreadsheets and emails for the next 3 weeks trying to work out what we're doing next, that kind of is a wasted opportunity. So there's more work to do around that. Rana, did you want to pick up on ModNots? You want me to do it?
I'll find for you to.
Yeah, okay. So I'll keep going. So basically, this boils down to integrating Jira and ServiceNow for us, right? There's a bit more to it than that. But But having a seamless transition between a ticket for a change and unrolling that into a backlog for a development team, and then bringing it back into your release management processes, this is the front line of automation in my view. Because then you can really bring the whole thing together and start then using that as a springboard to build out more of a kind of more focus on automation in run and in operations, and really bring that kind of site reliability set of practices to the fore. So that's broadly where the journey has been with Atom, and they're going to do lots more exciting things to come.
Yeah, so it's probably worth pointing out. So some of the tooling stacks we talked about, like Terraform and Vault. So if you think about static architecture versus dynamic architecture or dynamic infrastructure, so old world, when you got static architecture in a data center, you're kind of using tickets to coordinate manual workflows to get stuff done. In the new world, what you want to have is people more in control of just, the press of a button. You've got an environment being provisioned or a change happening. And so whilst you can still instigate it via a ticket, and what we're talking about, we'll use tools like ServiceNow to be the mechanism of instigating a ticket, but that will integrate quite seamlessly with the automation capability to allow you to kind of provision a change into an environment, create a new environment, to kill an environment that you don't need anymore, right? And those tools will manage the workflow, but the bulk of the work, which used to be manual, it's gone because you're doing it through your DevOps via SREs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and knowing what's in your environments actually is the other thing. So the CMDB side of the feedback loop into your config management database is a really important feature of that integration as well. So final thoughts? So from our journey, we started a journey, and we really needed to kind of really think about what were the outcomes we were looking for. And quite often you start a journey and then you kind of have to remind yourself why you're doing something. And for us, it's really, we wanted to be able to create the products and services we want for our customers, and to create a bank that can operate at a lower cost by leveraging technology to automate as much as possible. And the automation wasn't just about cost, because we're a regulated entity. We don't really like making mistakes. So by having automation where you have repeatable processes, it minimizes the human factor of making mistakes. Yeah, DevOps and Agile essential but not sufficient. I hope I made the point. Architecture is really important. You can have the best DevOps and the best Agile, but if you've got a big monolithic blob, you're not going to drive agility. So I mentioned a number of times, tools. A tool's a tool, right? So do not forget the investment in people and culture. Quite often it's not thought about. For us, it was through the journey. A lot of work has happened getting people together, breaking down silos across different teams to have a more agile way of working, and creating a culture of using the tools in the right way to create outcomes, rather than trying to use the new tools in the way we were using the old tools, which effectively wouldn't give you the results you need, which is kind of the point Reg was talking about as well. So, it's about the tools, the architecture, the people, the culture to get you the outcome you need. Then I talked before about suppliers and partners. For us, it's very important. We're using this journey to basically lock in to partners we want to work with to give us the capability, and not really focus on a purely transactional relationship. Because like I said before, you will undoubtedly have blips on your journey, even when you're in live service. But it's really about having a partner to work with you to kind of get over that in the best way possible for both sides. And the last one, just to re-emphasize the point again, I think this is not purely around Atom, but I think in many examples, if we'd started again, if we had the opportunity to go back a year, 18 months, we'd have done more, right? We'd have gone, well, that was great, but all the bits I left out were the bits that are still slowing me down. So the one thing I would leave you is wherever you are on your roadmap, see if you can do more. If you haven't got to the infrastructure, automate the infrastructure, right? If you've planned to automate the infrastructure, but you go, I'll deal with service management next year, this can take time, and you really don't have the time. So automate that too. Get your operational automation in place.
Yeah.
Think about how far you can push the envelope.
Yeah. And I think building on that, you're never going to be done in terms of you have a view of a milestone or for a journey and go, right, I hit that milestone, but you're not really done because you've gone for a journey, you've automated a number of things, then you go, right, there's still more to do, right? And if you stop doing that, you'll stop getting further benefits that you can through the automation. And for a bank, it's important because the more you could automate into a repeatable process, the less mistakes you make, the less issues you'll effectively proliferate into your customers, etc., or create more work within the bank as well. So you just can't think about projects done or milestones hit. You have to think about what's next.
So I think that's us. Thank you. We could do a couple of questions now, or we'll hang around at the side to have a chat. Any burning ones that you want to raise? Yeah, at the front here. Oh, sorry, excuse me, just 1 minute. Yes, please.
So, were there any questions about concentration risk when you spoke with the regulators?
I think for us, because we were looking at Google, which was slightly, at that point in time, different in terms of other banks were looking at AWS, there was discussions, but the focus was, because we're going to Google, how do we see it operating? Obviously, as part of various discussions, and internally we have to think about, lock-in, et cetera. But Reg talked about a good point around Anthos and the ability the strategy of Google to kind of be able to move between different providers or move back into on-prem. So that was interesting, but at the point we were contracting, Anthos wasn't really an option. So we looked at basically an option of how we can move away from Google if we had to, but that's because we needed to have a documented exit strategy.
Okay, and there was one question from the lady here. Yes, please.
This was absolutely fascinating and really, really useful for me. I work for a financial institution, one of the incumbents, and it's extremely difficult to get them to actually move toward being cloud native. It would be very interesting to understand how you worked with your executive board to get that buy-in to move towards this vision.
Okay. So it's quite interesting because I was on a FS panel yesterday at Google, and the same question came about. So I think it was part of my job as one of the executives of the company on Exco to help educate my colleagues about why we're doing it and how we're going to do it. So I did a number of teaching sessions at Exco, which talked about what is cloud, different flavors of cloud, et cetera, and the benefits and some of the drawbacks. Similarly, we did that on DevOps and SREs, et cetera, talked about operating model changes. And that was to get buy-in. So when we talked about discussions with a regulator, those sort of discussions are led by one of my colleagues, Chris Box, who's our Chief Risk Officer. So he and I went to see the regulators with members of our team, but I needed to be confident that he was happy, probably not the right word, but he understood what we were trying to do, and we had his approval, in terms of he understood we're doing this in a very safe way, we understood the risks, we've got controls over any risks, the mitigations, etc. And one of the differentiations, I think, at Atom is I didn't have to go through many hurdles. It's got a flat organization structure. And we also had the sponsorship of my boss, the CEO, to kind of say, we're doing this, and the board as well, because right at the onset of Atom, it was about we wanted to create a technology organization that will give us the right capabilities to support our customers really well. So it all fitted together. But I think the education and the communication is key in terms of making sure all the executives of the bank understand why you want to do this and how you're going to do it, and keep reminding them, because it's not a quick journey.
If you're not shutting down a data center, it is somewhat a leap of faith. And on that basis, it's got to be sponsorship from the top, not trying to convince those in your organization who are minded otherwise. Or at least, clearly, if that's your circumstances, I don't want to sound a little hopeless, but it's much harder to do to convince people when the business case kind of depends on whether you're actually retiring a data center or not. Other than that, you can make the case. You can do some of the things I did. They're a bit esoteric, but you can make them. But it's not as clear. So you need sponsorship.
Because a lot of this for us was around speed and agility and the cost benefits of that. Yeah. I think we're done.
Are we all right to take another one? No, we're out. So we will be at the side and look forward to talking to you then.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.